were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought?
Well, I'm not going to say there's no rational thoughts today. I'm sure there will be, especially with the guests that we have on today. Oh my gosh, I'm always excited to talk to my friends and author friends and CEOs and whatnot. But this guy's a little special because we have a shared passion for something which probably be revealed somewhere in the show. His bio reads like a soap opera, and I'm sure he's heard that before. I'll just read it the way he gave it to me. It's pretty amazing. Imagine your wife telling you your baby really isn't yours. Your grandfather and stepfather die of cancer. Your father is murdered. Uncle dies in a plane crash. All this more happens to you before you are 21 years old. Could it get worse? It could, and it did for this guy. He was born and raised in a cult and left it as so-called family and friends shun him for life. Treat him as if he is dead for making this decision. So world's upside down, 350 grand in debt, loses everything, not just your money, but it feels like you lose your soul here. But this gentleman, like a lot of people who are resilient and move forward, he's turned it around and made millions, devoting his life to helping others break through their past, create a future they only dream about. He's been on Fox and Friends, Inside Edition, been on Dr. Phil. He's a real guy, okay? He's got a real great story here. So I'll let him tell more of that, and we'll talk about the most important thing, which is how we can help you. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on the show Gary Coxe. Gary, how are you? Gary,
Doug, how are you?
Look at that. We've got a friend on the shoulder here today too.
Yeah, we got Gary and little tequila today. I'm a animal lover, so tequila is tequila's actually a rescue. So she's in some serious training and doing well.
Do you know how old she is?
She is 18 years old. You want to get down? All right, we go. You want to get down?
And they have like what, 30, 40-year lifespan or something, right? Or longer?
Oh, I wish, Doug. It's about 80 to 100, my friend.
Oh, so they outlive you. So you got to have a will and something for the birds.
Oh yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really cool. So before we get started, we're going to talk a little about your story and journey, but we're going to talk. I want to give people a reason to stick around for a minute. And you mentioned something before the show, but what you're really famous for. So can you tell us about that real quick?
Oh man, this sounds arrogant. There's a couple of things. Which one?
Well, let's focus on the 5-6 figures in a day versus
Oh yeah. Okay, so what I do is I help a lot of coaches, authors, consultants. I help them, especially if they're doing like 6 figures in a year from their book sales. I help them condense that where they're doing it literally in 1 month or one event. And I think what happens, Doug, is when people hear that, the first thing is, if you're not exposed to this industry like I am, our friends talk about, well, yeah, I did $1 million last week and I did 100,000. So what happens is if you're not exposed to this, it's so new to you. So, I mean, the way I look at it, think of it this way, right? If you have a $20 book, a book that you make $20,
right?
How many books would you have to sell to make $1 million? You'd have to sell 50,000 books.
Right.
Well, my background, I've done, as you know, a lot of TV. I was fortunate to do 3 years on Dr. Phil's show, The Doctors. And common sense tells me if I'm going to do a presentation, I'd rather do one presentation in front of 1 million people as opposed to one presentation in front of 20 or even 1,000. So there are ways to do things faster. I mean, like you were alluding to, we both have a passion for aviation. So let's say that you're flying in a helicopter and I'm in a bicycle and we have a 1 mile race and we begin at the same time. The chances of you winning and beating me are 100%. So you take off, you go, boom. So now let's say we're going to go 20 miles. This time I take the helicopter and you take a twin engine airplane. You're going to beat me. Let's say we're going to go 500 miles. This time I take your twin engine airplane and you take a jet. Well, you're going to beat me. So the point here is there's always a better, quicker, faster way. And a lot of things, a lot of ways that we're prevented from getting to that level is we just don't know. And it's back to the same adage, we don't know what we don't know.
That's right.
So my job is to get people exposed to know what I know and the strategies that I use to help people do numbers like this.
Yes. The short version of that is this is not some pie in the sky made up thing. This is a real thing that real people do. And the one reason that you're on the show, Gary, is that we both know people in the internet marketing industry which are kind of hypey and icky, right?
Right.
Like, oh, I don't really want to deal with that. And because consumers are smarter now. And
Sure.
so there's legitimate businesses like yours that actually does this. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we do, I want to go back to your origin story for a few minutes and talk about this this concept of being totally crushed as a young man and still rising and pulling yourself out of that. Were you aware? What did you do, or how did you turn your life around?
Well, I was very fortunate, Doug, before all these tragedies, when I was 11, my first business, which is what I started at 11, my second at 15, and then shortly after that, I was making $100,000 as a teenager. So that's equivalent to like, millions right now, right? And so when I lost everything and went through all this trauma, one thing I did have was I knew at one point in my life that I was very successful. And if I did it once, I could do it twice. And the reason I had such a hard time getting back up the next time is because I became a victim, if you will, of my circumstances of my wife telling me my baby's not there. My circumstances of my father being murdered, my uncle, in fact, 10 miles away from here, killed in a plane crash. So when you have all this tragedy, it's really hard to get back up. So I have to say I was very fortunate and very blessed to be able to get to the point where, hey, I've got something to lean on that I've done before. And if I've done it once, I can do it again. It doesn't make it easy, but it does make it possible.
Yeah, that is great advice. And I share that sentiment, having been a multimillionaire and broke, and in that order.
Yeah, not a fun place to be.
No, but what about the people who are still on their journey of going, scaling up? They haven't had that tragedy, but they have the internal tragedy. I know you've written some books on this topic too, of your headspace. How do people get out of that if they don't have the background you do?
Right. That book you're referring to is Don't Let Others Rent Space in Your Head. Well, to be honest with you, God bless them if they don't. I think it should be an easier run for them, But the common thing is we have there's a number of common denominators. Like, I'm very fortunate to have a number of my clients are billion-dollar companies and billionaires. Right. And there's a couple things they all have in common. I mean, one, here's a big one. And most people will listen to this and go, well, yeah, okay. But when you stop and think about how much not understanding and controlling this controls your business and your life. And one is they all have in common the ability to not be overly concerned about what other people think about them.
Yes.
Stop and think about how many decisions you make or don't make if you're being really honest with yourself. Because remember, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So if you're being really honest with ourselves, we will figure out and we'll determine subconsciously and consciously, wait a minute, there are certain moves that I know I need to make that I'm not making because subconsciously or consciously, I'm really concerned about what other people are going to think.
Yeah.
And when I work with and hang around billionaires, one thing they just make decisions. They understand whatever the decision is, there's a consequence. You're going to like me or not like me. It's going to work. It's not going to work. It's going to cost me $1 million. It's going to lose me $1 million. Make me $1 million, whatever. But we have to get to that point where we're just not overly concerned about what other people think. And I mean, if you're really honest, you'd be shocked how many decisions and things that you're keeping yourself from doing. I don't care how successful you are, because of some of those thought processes. That is
so true. And I've interviewed some people at that level too, and they're like, whatever. They don't have to impress anybody. They're not right. They really. Do you ever read that book, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
I have not.
Okay, I didn't finish.
I don't give a F what you think if I've read it or not. So go ahead.
Hey, that's it. You got the whole book. I read the first chapter or two. I'm like, okay, I get it. Because in my case, I was definitely a people pleaser. I was worried about that stuff, and fortunately, my wife taught me no, you just be yourself. Don't worry about what people think about you.
And I'm surprised. You want to see that change quickly with people. Put them in front of a camera. It's crazy. I remember one guy. I don't say this to be critical of him, but he was landing a helicopter on a helicopter pad, which is very difficult if you've never landed a helicopter on a helicopter pad. It's difficult to land a helicopter, period. So I brought my camera out. I wanted to video that because I thought it was so cool. He was so aware that I was videoing him. That guy could not put that helicopter on that landing pad until I put the camera away. The moment I put the camera away, he was able to put the helicopter down. because
that is,
he was influenced by his own thoughts, by what he perceived as something watching him from the outside.
right. We see with Olympic athletes, those skaters, right? They fall once, their chances of falling twice go up like by tenfold.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
It's crazy. I was so fortunate. We're going to get into the flying thing a little bit. I was so fortunate to be invited to be a distinguished visitor on the USS Abraham Lincoln. And when I was out there on the ship, they're doing qualifications for the pilots.
Yeah.
So it's not just the air boss, and it's like everyone's watching these guys doing their qualifying to land on the carrier. And that
Absolutely.
was, amazing, because they're under a lot of pressure, of course.
Massive.
Calm seas, daytime. Not that it's any easier, but
right.
all right. So this idea, let's get into the meat of this, because I'm so curious personally and professionally, and mainly for my clients, how they can go ahead and take a look at the big picture and that compression of value and revenue, of course, from what you do. So you have a methodology or process for that, or give me the outline.
Yeah, I mean, I have an inner circle program, Doug, where people join and they have us for a year, and we give them like over 120 casting producers for TV shows. And why do we do that? We give them access to, podcasts like yourself. We have Joe Rogan's information in there. Yeah. Here's the thing. People typically don't think big enough. So when I say big enough, I'm thinking, when last have you thought about, we talked about this earlier, having a movie done on your story? When last have you thought about being an expert on a reality show that stays within your branding? When last have you thought about your own talk show, or being an expert on a talk show, or having your own TV show? There's so many possibilities out there that most people don't think that big. And because they don't think that big, they'll do, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 in sales, or 50,000 or so, or whatever, when the possibility is so much bigger than that. And again, it's because most people, number one, they're not thinking that big. And then if they're not thinking that big, they're not going to be able to figure out how or what's the access to get to that level.
Right. Okay. So if somebody is doing this on their own, let's say, I mean, there's the media part. But you mentioned like online or in-person events as well, for they can make bulk sales. You want to talk about that?
Well, I think a book is, for most people, or should be, a lead magnet.
Right.
It should be an opportunity and a gateway for people to create value in what it is that you're offering. The famed know, like, and trust. And then that should be a segue to perhaps larger speaking engagements, a segue to, high-end coaching. When I work with coaches, the number one thing I see that they don't charge enough.
Right.
I was working with a lady. She's blowing it up. She's got 500,000. No, I looked today. She had 600,000 people on her YouTube subscriber now, and they're legit subscribers. Right. And I said, the first thing you need to do is double your fee. Double your fee.
Yeah.
And all she did, she just added $5,000 to it. And I'm saying, what are you thinking? So here's the thing. The reason people hire me is for me to tell them to do things that are counterintuitive from what they thought they would do. And that's why they hire me. If it wasn't counterintuitive, or they didn't feel uncomfortable with it, they would not need me. So if I were to say to somebody, double your fee, all these things start going off. Am I really worth it? Well, I haven't had anybody hire me for this fee, so why would I go for this fee? I mean, so many things go on. So what my job is to do is to uninstall the BS that's in their head, and then reinstall, because all it is, the hesitation that's keeping somebody from getting to that level is simply a belief system or a thought process. I mean, birds of a feather flock together. That's Winnie in the background there, right? So when you hang around people that do this on a regular basis, it's normal. Yeah. But when you're not hanging around people like that, so when I get my people to hang around a community of people that think this way. So, when somebody hit me up, like, was it yesterday, I hit somebody in my team, we want Gary for X amount of speaking engagement. Right now it's $50K a pop. That's it. And then if you want me for 3 of them, it's $50K a pop.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is when people, what they do often is they're too overly concerned about the outcome, and desperation has a scent to it, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to learn to realize that, look, hey, if you want my stuff, great. If you don't want it, that's fine too.
Yeah.
And because if not, people will look at you as being desperate. But then the ability is, one of the things, that I share, which is so important, you already know this, that a lot of people, they have great stuff, but those who really crush it are those who are effective communicators.
Yes.
They understand how to effectively communicate. And when you understand how to effectively communicate your message, I'm not talking about verbally putting the right words together, but I'm talking about a serious way of learning and understanding how to communicate the message in such a way that you're intentionally saying and doing things to break down the resistance of buying, intentionally doing and saying things to get people to change their behavior, to get a result from the content that you offer. So there's so much to it, but once the ducks are in a row and it's done intentionally, man, the outcome is nuts. It's crazy.
Yeah. I was part of Oren Class Mastermind for a while, and he gave us coins, right? It said "Never be needy," and he told a story about he was doing some merger acquisition, and it was like a mid-size, 8-figure deal, whatnot. And there's some discussion, negotiation going on, and at one point, it's like, okay, I've given you everything, right? And I go, well, I want to still analyze one more thing. He says, I tell you what, I want you to take that piece of paper you have, I want you to roll it up. Can you do it right now? Roll it up. Okay, now we can roll a tight roll. Now drop your pants and shove it up your butt and lose my number. This is the guy who's trying to get a deal done. And he pitched the guy a week ago, and now he's telling him to go away in a rather violent manner. Right. And we're all laughing, of course, because I don't think many people have the stones to do that. But the idea of not being needy. Yeah. And I have an old saying that I try to employ. It's all for the can. It's like volume cures everything. If I've got 12 people to talk to, I don't need them all. I just need 1 or 2. Right. I don't need it. So volume, it works for dating. It works for business. It works for everything. If you only have one person to talk to, of course, you're going to be a little bit desperate. 100%. If I get 10 calls today, hey, whoever wants to work with me, great. If you don't, no big deal.
And I'm a firm believer in Pareto's law or principle. Yeah. The 80-20, 20% of the efforts you put in create 80% of the results. And when you apply that in every area of your life, from, I apply it when I go to the gym, I apply it in my diet, I definitely apply it in my business, I try to apply it on my day-to-day tasks, then you become very consciously aware of how you can do so much more. So think about it. If 20% of the efforts that we put in get us 80% of the results, and then we were aware of the other 80% that's just not as strong as the 20, then we double that 20, we could literally double our income, and we're still at half throttle. That's phenomenal. But if you're not reminded of this on a regular basis, if you're not understanding how to implement these principles, basically, if you're not careful, you're either going to be stuck in the hamster's wheel, or you're going to be pushing a parked car, active, but active accomplishing nothing.
Yeah. So it sounds like when you're doing your I call it the compression, right? You're trying to do a month's worth of work in one day. Can you give me an example of doing that, like at an event where someone's like, is like.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm going to do an event, I would rather an event with either a large amount of people that are high-end purchasers, or they don't have to be a large amount of people. That could just be high-end purchasers. So I have an event coming up that I'm going to be offering a $45,000 program. Well, you can't just go on stage for 30 minutes and offer a $45,000 program. It's systematic. There's things that have to be done. So I educate the promoter on how this is done. So you stop and think about it. If I'm going to be in front of 1,000 people at $45K a head, all I need is 22 people, and that's $1 million day. Right. So what you have to do is, if you're number one, you've got to think, is this possible? If you don't believe it's possible, you're not even going to go down that street. And that's why people hire me. They hire me to also steal some of my belief, and I'll let them have it for a little while. Why not? Right. Yeah. But I mean, stop and think about the math. And I have an illustration about what's called a bluefin tuna. So, if you come to my house and I live, on the water, and I said to you, hey, we're going to fly, we're going to catch some bluefin tuna. Now, there was a guy in 2019, Doug, 2019, he paid $3.2 million for a 650-pound bluefin tuna. That's $5,000 a pound. Right. Wow. So if I say to you, let's go ahead and be realistic and, let's be conservative and let's go for a 150-pound tuna. Yeah. So you come to my house tomorrow morning, you give me, you bring a rod and reel thick line. They like heron, I think, and squid. So you bring a bunch of squid. We wake up early in the morning at my place and we throw the line out. I forgot to tell you, it's freshwater lake that I live on. So we're going to have a challenge here, right? So we throw the line out and we wait. And we wait and we wait, and all of a sudden, at the end of the day, water's splashing like crazy. The reel's coming in, and we look and we look, and we're getting exhausted, and we bring it right up to the shore. It's a 150-pound alligator. I'm in Florida. But now that 150-pound alligator, okay, here's the thing. That is $22 a pound.
Yeah.
So 150-pound bluefin tuna, right, is at $5,000 a pound, is $750,000.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We just spent the same amount of effort and energy bringing in a 150-pound alligator that's worth $3,300. Now, if you were to divide that, the 3,300 into 750,000, you would have to catch 227 alligators to be equivalent to that one bluefin tuna. But here's the problem. Which one is easier? Well, if you already know and you believe 100-pound bluefin, people are addicted to being busy. So you're going to sit there because you're excited about the excitement of catching that 150-pound alligator 227 times throughout the year, to be equivalent to being bored and wondering, when is this bluefin tuna coming? And it might be 3 months or 6 months, but boom, once you catch that, you're done for the day. But because we believe we have to be busy, or we believe that we can't increase our prices, we get stuck in the hamster wheel, even though we're okay doing the 227 catches that we have to do. So my question then is, if you had this scenario, were you having, or did you have the right message? We had the right message because we knew we had the right bait. We had the right message, but we had the wrong pond.
Right.
So you can have the right message in the wrong pond. What's worse than the right message in the wrong pond is the wrong message in the wrong pond. What's worse than that is the wrong message in the wrong pond, or the right message in the wrong pond. You got to have the right message in the right pond. And with 8 billion people on this planet, there's somebody out there willing to pay for whatever it is that you offer, for whatever price that you're offering. You just have to figure out how to position yourself to get them.
That is so true. My wife's going to definitely listen to this podcast sometime because she's singing your praises. It's so funny you say that. I was at a networking event years ago, and this is in California. There's some hoity-toities there. And this one guy said, "Yeah, I'm a relationship coach." I'm like, "Okay, relationship coach. Oh, great. Helping people, get married or find a date." He charged $300,000 to work with him.
Yeah, there you go.
And I'm like, that blew my mind, because I'm thinking, whatever. Even a high end one, I'm thinking, okay, $5-10 a month or something.
Right.
The matchmaking thing, $300,000, and it makes total sense because that pond is people who like to them. It's
people
like
who can afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a $350,000 business coaching day. Well, it's actually a getaway. We do it in a private island in the Bahamas. And I take everybody, I take a team, a company, whoever hires me, and part of their team. These things, I mean, when you deal with billion-dollar companies, to cut a check for $25,000 for your consulting, I charge $25,000 an hour, and they pay that. But if you're looking for companies that make $100,000 a year, they're not going to pay you $25,000 for an hour. No. So you have to step up, and to step up, you got to change a lot of your belief systems.
Right. Is that applicable for like anybody? I'm just trying to think about somebody.
Yes, anybody, but it's not applicable to those selling apples compared to apples, because in the commodity you're limited to where you can go. But if it's a skill that you have that other people don't have, or you've marketed yourself well enough because you're solving rich people problems, then it's definitely applicable.
Because I'm always looking for like the exception of the rule. And I even example, I was listening to Jonah Berger's book Contagious, which is just wonderful, about why things catch on. And he gave the example of a I think he called it $100 hamburger, not the kind that you and I used to. It's an actual specialty thing that he made at this little deli, and they charged $100 for it, and it was just the gorgeous food. I think it was a burger, I'm not sure exactly, but he talked about how much PR it got. He even got on like Conan O'Brien
Absolutely.
because of it.
And people will buy it just because they say they bought it. I mean,
Exactly.
and you know, when I take people and work with them, it's so amazing to watch their whole thought process shift, especially when I take them in the jet to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Because most people have never flown a private jet or definitely haven't done it regularly.
Right.
So what I get them to do, and it has nothing to do with the ego and the bells and the whistles. It has everything to do with making a couple shifts, just knowing what those moves are to have a better lifestyle and take your game to a whole nother level. And when you see and feel and smell it and taste it, you come back thinking, wait a minute, how do you know, every time I push that button to start that jet or start that helicopter, my mind goes, how do I do this more? How do I do this more? And I'm constantly obsessed with what's the next move? What's the next gameplay, right?
That's right. That's so true. And just understand, people, if you know, before I was successful in real estate, I would do the whole, you know, dream building thing. I'd go to the airports and I'd go to Oshkosh and I'd visualize what it'd be like to own that airplane, go sitting in it, smelling it.
Right.
And when you really visualize that enough, I didn't own anything at the time, but a year later I did.
There you go.
And I owe a lot to that. You know, I'm not going to call it like law of attraction stuff, but it's aligned with that.
It keeps you focused. It keeps you focused. It gets the nervous system going. The nervous system can't tell the difference between imagination and reality, man. And I play that game. It's all about playing games with your mind instead of your mind playing games with you.
I love it. Any last tips on people doing their authors, basically a CEO who's going to launch his book and get out there? Is there any you know, best practices or tip on how they can do that event thing and you know, make a 6-figure or 7-figure day?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, you know, not in a limited time you have, but the biggest advice I can say is make your book your lead magnet and go for something a lot higher with regards to an offer, whether it's a 10K, a 100K offer, a boot camp course, but don't be thinking small, because there's companies out there that need what you have. And look, if you're the cheapest, people will not think you're the best. If you're the best, they don't expect you to be the cheapest.
There's a quote, folks. You know, I told you want to take notes on my show. That's it. Now it's in the show notes below. But what Gary just said is gold. You should print it up and put it on your computer, your desk. Very good job. I appreciate that, Gary. Thank you so much. Stick around.
Thank you, Doug.
Flying. Unless people want to hear about flying stuff, I don't know. But I got a bunch of flying questions for you. Because we're both pilots, and we have this thing called hangar flying where we talk about stuff. And
right. I'm doing it right now. I just told you, I just finished doing the jet thing this weekend. And if they want to come with me and do a mastermind in the jet, or they want to go on my online program to learn how to do all this.
Yes.
If you don't mind, may I share my website?
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. It's just GaryCoxe.com, and you'll see where you can join me live. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. I'm on all social media. It's Gary Coxe, C-O-X-E. Got an E at the end, GaryCoxe.com. Thank you, Doug.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And stick around. We got more to talk about. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Concludes our show for today. I'm going to have that gentleman back on. He's got so much wisdom, and you need to learn it or apply it, or probably both. So I appreciate you. Make sure you take notes and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.